Now, Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority.
105.9 FM.
And AM 630.
WMAL.
8:07. Happy Thursday morning to you. It's Brian Neiman and Brian Wilson. Mary Catherine has the day off. We'll be back tomorrow. Tucker Carlson joins us now with the Daily Caller, who's written a fascinating expose about media matters. Good morning, Tucker.
Gentlemen, good morning.
You know, I have to say that I follow a lot of people on Twitter, Republicans and conservatives, and there's always this back and forth with media matters, and I kind of roll my eyes at it, saying, you know, this is kind of inside baseball. It doesn't really matter. Why are we having these fights? It's just kind of just dumb. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But then I read your piece, and I was the thing that really caught my attention. There are two things, really. Number one was the fact that Media Matters does have a direct connection to the White House. You write that Media Matters actually meets or has communication with someone within the White House almost on a weekly basis. Is that right?
On a weekly basis. There's a conference call every week between Media Matters, the White House, and the Center for American Progress. That's exactly right. The head of Media Matters, the chairman and the president, both journeyed to the White House a couple of years ago to meet with Valerie Jarrett, the president's top advisor, and Anita Dunn, communications director. Yeah, there's no question. There's direct coordination between the Obama political team, communications team, and Media Matters.
All right. Some people may be listening right now. They don't know what Media Matters is. Could you just give a general explanation of what
Media Matters is a progressive nonprofit organization whose aim is to make news coverage more favorable to progressive causes and Democratic politicians. And it has succeeded pretty impressively in its mission. I mean, we uncovered and I think demonstrated that Media Matters has a great influence on a lot of people who create the news, on reporters and columnists and editors. They intimidate journalists, but they also rely on the fact that most journalists agree with them. Most journalists are liberal. Some are very liberal. Some are just sort of, you know, living in a bath of liberalism that is your average newsroom. But most of them are pretty sympathetic to the basic aims of Media Matters, and Media Matters uses that to its advantage.
There have been some suggestions that it has gotten extremely personal, and that they have had conversations about whether they should delve into the personal lives of the people who work at Fox News. Yeah, and not just the anchors, not just Bill O'Reilly, but the producers, the executives, anybody who works at Fox. In the view of Media Matters, is fair game. We uncovered a memo that was sent a couple of years ago to David Brock by one of his employees outlining various ways to undermine Fox, and they included hiring private detectives to look into the personal lives of Fox employees, Oppo research, attacks on social media, on Facebook, putting billboards outside the homes of Fox employees, very, very creepy stuff, putting moles inside the company, following Fox employees to private events. Pretty over the top, not the kind of thing any politician could get away with.
Putting moles within the company. Wow.
But putting moles within the company.
You have to have pretty deep pockets to be able to do stuff like that.
And they do, and we have a story tomorrow on who funds Media Matters, and I think you'll be amazed to see the number of left-wing, but also not even groups that have a reputation for being left-wing, donors that they have. It's absolutely remarkable. They have an enormous budget, tens of millions of dollars. And look, if I got to be honest, if I was a left-wing activist and I really believed that the American media were right-wing, and obviously that would mean I would be insane, because it's so far from the truth, but let's just say I did believe that, I think Media Matters would be a pretty good investment. These guys are serious, they're smart, they have connections at the highest levels of Democratic politics. They've done a lot, actually.
All right, here's what I was going to get to, because obviously I have an issue with the direct correlation with the White House, direct talks with the White House.
Well, it's totally wrong. And by the way, why are they a nonprofit? Why is the taxpayer subsidizing?
Well, that's what I was going to get into. Is it illegal at all in any way?
It turns out that the laws surrounding nonprofits are very, very hard to define and almost never enforced. And by the way, that is true on both sides. I'm just going to be, I want to be as fair as I can be. There are conservative groups that are in effect coordinating with Republican politicians, for sure. I've seen it in my life here in Washington. But no one ever loses his nonprofit status. or that I'm aware of. I mean, and we went and talked to a lot of experts on the subject, a number of them who are conservative and don't like Media Matters, and all of them said, I don't know, if they could lose their nonprofit status. I do know that Republicans on the Hill are looking into this right now. I wouldn't be surprised if there are hearings on the subject. I wouldn't be surprised if the laws were changed as a result. But as it stands, what they're doing may be legal. It's certainly wrong. It's absolutely wrong for a nonprofit to be coordinating with the White House. And by the way, I don't know why that's not on the front page of the New York Times. Actually, I do. And the reason is the New York Times is in full sympathy with Media Matters.
All right.
That's why it's not on the front page.
Fair enough. But I'll ask you this. I guess I don't have that big of a problem with Media Matters talking to E.J. Dionne and talking to Eugene Robinson and feeding them information. They're columnists, they're opinion guys.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so, I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, my guess is that
I mean, I'm not saying there is anything wrong with that. I mean, you know that Gene Robinson and EJ, both of whom I like, by the way. I like them both a lot, actually, personally. They're good guys. They're liberal. They're pretty upfront about that.
Right.
I don't think that's sinful. I do think it's wrong when news organizations that portray themselves as nonpartisan or straight, ideologically non-aligned,
right.
Take information from Media Matters and don't tell their readers about it. We caught Ben Smith, who now works at BuzzFeed, used to work at Politico, holding a memo that Media Matters gave him almost a year ago, and he didn't print most of it. He sat on that information for a year, and it was pretty damning stuff. We did print it, and it showed Media Matters' efforts to, attack Fox and undermine other conservative media. It was interesting as hell. I don't know how you could sit on something like that for a year. I don't know how you could look at that and say, that's not news. It is news, demonstrably.
Especially working for a company like Politico, which should be, printing stories that are of that nature.
Sure. I mean, that right there strikes me. We did a whole story on this. Is an example of the subversion of news. I mean, trust me. Go read our story on this subject. I don't think you can finish it and think, yeah, Ben Smith is a straight reporter. He's not, and yet he gets credit for being one. And that, to me, is the problem.
Right.
When reporters who everyone regards as fair arbiters aren't, when they've got their thumb on the scale, when they've got an agenda, and he clearly does have an agenda.
Well, I have been in the sights of Media Matters from time to time in my career, and the thing that I don't think that you've hit upon yet that a lot of people don't understand is that when Media Matters comes out and says something about somebody, it is immediately cut and pasted in 1,000 different websites.
Well,
it just reverberates across the internet in about 20 minutes. And if the initial information is wrong,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because you can't do a thing about it.
Well, I'll tell you where it has an effect, and I've lived this.